We live in an era where safety feels guaranteed by the device in our pocket. With persistent GPS, cellular networks, and rapid emergency response, we assume help is always just a swipe away. But as you watch those digital signal bars drop away, that safety net disappears with them. Drive just 2 hours past the city limits, and you cross over an invisible boundary. Sociologists refer to these dark zones as civilization vacuums, remote regions where the social contracts and invisible rules that keep people behaving predictably simply stop applying. This chart illustrates our typical anxieties when heading off-grid: dangerous weather, getting lost, maybe wild animal attacks. But look at how the shape distorts when we factor in actual survivor data. The most severe threat in deep isolation isn't nature at all. It is unchecked human malice. By analyzing 3 verified accounts from travelers who ventured too far off the map, we can identify exactly how 3 distinct types of human predators exploit extreme isolation to hunt. Our first threat profile begins with a struggling comedian driving 5 hours across state lines for a comedy competition. Navigating with an old cell phone and terrible service, he decided to wing his directions, eventually finding himself hopelessly lost on a dark, unfamiliar stretch of backcountry farmland. The isolation quickly turned mechanical. A loud bang echoed underneath his vehicle, and the steering wheel violently jerked to the side. Both front tires were instantly obliterated, impaled by several heavy nails deliberately scattered across the dark asphalt. He was totally stranded. Minutes later, headlights flared directly behind him. A beat-up white pickup truck parked aggressively close to his bumper, driven by men he'd awkwardly encountered at a rural gas station an hour earlier. The men approached silently, violently pulling at his locked door handles and smashing their fists against the glass. Without warning, one of the attackers unleashed a piercing, erratic howl. The comedian shoved his driver's side door open, knocked the screaming man to the ground, and sprinted into the pitch-black woods. He dove flat into the brush, holding his breath as his pursuers ran right past him in the dark. This schematic breaks down a crime of opportunity. In vast rural expanses, predators cannot reliably track a moving target. Instead, they weaponize the local geography. They use physical choke points like narrow farm roads to lay traps, effectively casting a net to force a victim into total vulnerability. Notice how the trap cuts off the target's options. The attacker controls all the variables: the location, the timing, and the escape routes, while the victim is violently stripped of their spatial awareness and completely cut off from the outside world. Taking a wrong turn on a back road can mean driving directly into a predator's perfectly orchestrated arena. Our second profile examines the territorial threat. On a cross-country road trip, 3 women stumbled upon a deeply overgrown abandoned farmhouse. Seeking a cheap thrill, they kicked in a warped wooden door and rolled out their sleeping bags on the floor of a seemingly empty room. They felt secure. Their logic dictated that because they were miles away from civilization and the structure was actively decaying, the chances of encountering another human being were practically 0. At 3 in the morning, the heavy wooden door was violently shoved open. 3 dangerously gaunt figures, 2 men and a woman, stepped silently into the room. Their faces were entirely obscured by bizarre homemade masks, a giant purple cube, cardboard cutouts, and a medical mask adorned with plastic holiday icicles. The intruders didn't demand money or items. Instead, they stood rigidly in the doorway. When one of the terrified girls began to scream, one of the men perfectly mirrored her shriek, screaming right back at her, while another mimed erratic, silent hand gestures in the dark. Criminologists point to the broken window theory, which suggests that visible decay invites criminal behavior. But deep off-grid, this effect scales up. Structurally abandoned spaces don't just invite vandalism, they act as magnets for individuals who have completely detached from societal norms and operate on the fringes of sanity. An empty building in the middle of nowhere is rarely completely vacant. It is territory claimed by predators who reject reality. Trespassing into these spaces forces you into their unpredictable, deranged world. The final category is the targeted threat. Following a successful proposal, a newly engaged couple spent their night sleeping under the stars in the open bed of a pickup truck, parked deep inside an isolated wilderness preserve. The fiancé had spent the entire trip terrified of bears, so when they heard heavy footsteps snapping twigs near the truck at midnight, they assumed it was an animal. But when the man cautiously peered over the tailgate, he saw a hooded figure pacing the perimeter, violently muttering to itself in a woman's voice. The man quietly handed his fiancée the car keys and jumped out with a pocket knife to scare the intruder away. Instead, the attacker lunged from the shadows underneath the truck chassis, slamming a thick tree branch into his ankle before erratically slashing at him with a kitchen knife. As the headlights cut through the dust, the man saw a face from his own past, his ex-girlfriend. She had stalked the couple across state lines, utilizing the isolation of the wilderness to execute a premeditated attack. The wilderness provides the ultimate cover for premeditated malice. Because victims naturally project their anxieties outward onto nature, worrying about weather or wild animals, they remain completely blind to human threats actively stalking them from their own past. These three distinct encounters are bound together by a single sociological concept, the witness effect. In normal daily life, the simple presence of other people creates an invisible psychological barrier that restrains our worst impulses. This equation outlines a dark reality. When you multiply extreme physical isolation by total anonymity, that psychological restraint evaporates. Once perpetrators are certain they are operating without witnesses, baseline rules of human decency disappear, resulting in an exponential surge of unrestrained, malicious behavior. Surviving these encounters leaves a lasting psychological scar. It exposes civilization as a fragile geographical border, one that vanishes entirely after just a few hours of driving. Romanticizing total isolation leaves you vulnerable. Strict preparation, reliable communication, and unwavering situational awareness are the only true defenses you have against the human predators waiting just past the edge of the map.